Hey everyone, good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you're from. We wanted to get this morning started based on our the request last week for the open office hours. The format for today is going to be a little bit different because our group is going to be a little bit smaller than what we had on the main webinar. So what we're thinking we'll do is we'll start off the conversation with one of the questions based on the registrations, and then we will open it up so y'all can unmute your mic when you'd like to talk, and then and we'll handle it via voice versus via chat, and we'll see how that goes. We also have the option for chat, so feel free to type into the chat if you have another question or a follow-up, or if you're having microphone issues or whatnot. But I believe we have Samir on the line, who is going to be one of the main presenter, or one of our main folks who was there last week, and also Doug is going to be joining us, and he should be calling in
I'm
shortly.
here.
Oh, hey, Doug. Oh, that's much better.
Hello.
All right. So Kathy, if you'd like to start off kicking it off with one of the questions, and then we'll just open the floor up for straight Q&A.
Sure. I'll start with a question from Anthony. I see you're on the line. Can there be two different grade bases within the same course? Likely have students opt for pass, fail, and graded for same course.
So yeah. Oh, sorry.
You
want to take it?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So a course can only have, or a class can only have one grading basis, a grade basis. However, you can use the grade basis option that's delivered, where you can give the student options of a number of different grade bases if you want to. So the OPT grade basis is what you would build, and you would attach the different grade bases that you want the student to be able to select from. When the student's going through enrollment, they would be given the option then to pick which grade basis they want. And that's something you would set up so all of your classes that you want to offer this would have the OPT grade basis, and then the student would be able to select which one they want.
And just to add to that, when you select in the grade scheme table on the OPT grade basis, you'll have an option of what grade basis associated with OPT are actually part of the OPT, so that the students may choose pass no pass, or credit no credit, or GRD, whatever grading basis that they want to choose for those specific courses that they have enrolled.
Once you select that option, you'll see at the bottom, it'll open up another window, just kind of a scroll area where you can add the different grade bases you want them to have. But the answer to your question is you can only have one grade basis on the class, so you would have to change your grade bases to this new grade basis of the optional one to give them the option of picking the other two or three, however many you want.
And it looks like we have a hand raised. Kathy, how did you want to handle, are y'all able to unmute your own mics, or do we need to do it administratively first? We might need,
oh. We can unmute as people raise their hands and they have a question. Why don't we just unmute their line so that we don't have the background noise?
I think I'm unmuted.
Dustin, great.
I just submitted that question, but as far as the OPT grade basis, is that something that only can be used really for students to choose what they want to do, or could you set that up and still administratively manually change grades after they've told you what they want?
Good question. So, and I think there's another one similar to that on our list of questions that we were looking at earlier. This is only for the student self-service experience where the student can make that choice. If you're doing it after the student is already enrolled, or you're doing it after the student's been graded, which were some of the questions, those are going to be through your administrative pages, and where you would select the grade basis you want to choose, where those grades exist. It's not something that the faculty can choose which option to pick, unfortunately. It's just for students.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have a question?
And if you do have a question you'd like to ask, please just raise your hand. Otherwise, we can just tick through the questions that we had received during registration.
Okay, let's go to another question that was submitted earlier. If using quick enroll to change a grade basis, should any other changes be made?
So the quick answer is probably just the grade basis and the grade. If you're doing it through quick enroll, I guess the question is, do you, if it's just for an individual student, that's fine. You wouldn't have to change it on the class association. You would just be changing it for an individual student. The grade basis being changed, because you're changing the grade basis, if you're not issuing the grade at that time, if this is about changing the grade basis so that the faculty can issue the grade, then you're changing the grade basis on the enrollment, which is the key, and your grade roster may need to be regenerated is the only other thing. And if that didn't answer your question, if you want to unmute, I'm happy to answer it better if there's more information you have.
JD, did you want to comment on that? That was, I see your hands up, and that was your question.
Yes, I was having trouble unmuting. It kept saying muted by organizer. I was confused. Okay,
Sorry.
I had to enter a question just to join this, so I really am not sure how we're going to do ours yet. What I do know is this. They're wanting to assign incomplete grades for everyone for spring term, the current term now. And then they want to allow people to make up the lab in a different term, possibly summer. So our grading is done first. I'm real curious how they're holding the lecture grade in the system when they're putting incompletes for everyone, which concerns me a great deal because I have no idea how they're expecting us to hold on to that original lecture grade. Then we're going to do grade changes once we get the lecture completed, because that is a percentage of the overall grade and there's only one grade. So yes, I slapped a question on there as far as incomplete because I know, or quick enroll, because I know I can change a grade basis as a one-off through that quick enroll process. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe if we can do it that way, but I am very confused which way to do it when these are the things that have to happen. We have to give them an incomplete, we have to allow them to take the lab in a different term, and we have to have a way of keeping this grade for the lecture and allowing that lab person to, because it may not be the same person now, to come up with the calculation of the overall grade. So yeah, I'm a little befuddled. What you got, buddy?
So, good question. There's a lot there. So let's
Yes.
break it down a little bit. So it sounds like your institution has decided that for lab component courses, where I'm assuming you have multiple components, you have a lecture and a lab that are offered in the same term.
That's correct.
And the students registered for those related classes.
That's correct.
And your grade, it sounds like, is on your lecture component.
It's going to be, yeah, complete, but there's not a grade on the lab component right now. We have one grade.
Right, and you can only have
Yes.
one grade on those associated classes. So
Right.
it sounds like your lab is currently on the lecture, but they want them to finish the lab in a subsequent term, and the work that they complete in that lab is going to be factored in to the incomplete grade that they're getting for the course.
You got it.
Okay, and how many of these do you have? Just curious.
I really haven't gone that far because I've been talking with my boss and saying, okay, so what's going on? And I don't understand what we're doing here. And my question I gave to you is what I gave to him this morning. And he says, well, I think they're expecting us to figure out how to actually do it, but this is what they are
Okay.
expecting. And I'm like, well,
So
oh my.
So you're correct in that you're gonna probably need to change these grades using Quick Enroll. Now, if you issue the incompletes for these particular courses and somebody refactors the grade and then they're issuing a change to that incomplete, my first question is, do you have your system set up where faculty can change grades?
No, we do not.
You do not.
They
Okay.
cannot.
So
They have to fill out a grade change form, and then
okay.
the record staff has to go in through Quick Enroll, and there's a option for grade change there through Quick
Right. So
Enroll.
you're very manual, so that's going to
Yes.
be an overhead on your part, obviously, administratively, to make those changes. As
Yes.
far as the grade for the lab, I say grade for the lab, but there's not an official grade in Campus Solutions for that lab, at least not the final grade. That's going to be on the incomplete that they're suggesting gets assigned. If the student is completing that lab during the summer, I guess my first question is it just independently being completed, or are they going to have students enroll in something? Do they want to have a course where students are enrolled in that lab for the
Yes.
summer?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
wanting to create a course, and she created a lab course. Well, I told her I can't. I mean, there's a different group for curriculum, a different department. And she said, test this. And I'm like, well, I can't enroll in a lab without a lecture. So this is not good. So I don't know. Will it have
So
to be a lecture?
you could for one semester effectively change your class association to and your catalog to not require that lab or not require the lecture and make the lab graded and let people grade the lab. But that's not what you typically do. And so it's going to look a little strange. And I'm not sure you would want to do that. Usually when schools give students an incomplete, the lapse grade is what determines when that grade gets flipped to a final grade or whatever grade you put in your lapse policy. And so for that incomplete, you're handling these a little bit differently than an incomplete. And that gives me a little pause, a little bit of concern, because if a student in a regular course has an incomplete, legitimately so, you're not going to know the difference between these lab courses where a student's being given an incomplete because it's a lab lecture-based course versus a student that's in another course that is getting a true incomplete. So the tracking of this is a little bit concerning. But if the concept of an incomplete is that the student completes the work and then that grade gets assigned, if the institution is going to have the student enroll in summer, then that brings up questions about tuition, financial aid. I'm guessing they're not charging the student for this enrollment.
That's
But
right.
those would be things I would want to think about. But you're right, Quick Enroll is probably where you're going to be making your changes once they factor in these grades. Whether you create a section or a new course to track this work that you have students enroll in, you're just going to need to make sure you build that the way it needs to if you're not charging them tuition and all of that. stuff. And then whoever factors in that last grade, you're going to have to get that information and then do a bunch of change grades. Watch your lapse policy and make sure that grades don't automatically get rolled to an F or whatever your policy is if you end up
Yeah, that's
using.
our policy, and we were gonna hold that from running that for a while, but
Sure. Yeah.
do you have any ideas on the best way to do this? You think that for this term, opening it up to students through self-service is the best way to go? Because I'm a little confused. I thought they wanted the pass-fail on spring, but you think that pass-fail is going to be at the point of them making up that lab, that they're going to say, you know,
Well, it depends on your school and how you guys are handling this. We haven't really talked about pass-fail so far in this question. So is your institution doing a pass-fail for all other courses for the term?
No.
No. Okay. They're not doing a pass-fail for these lecture lab
We
combo
don't
courses?
even, we don't have a pass-fail at all on any
Oh, okay.
class
All right.
ever.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, that's easy. So
How's that?
you're not doing that.
No,
Okay.
we don't
All right.
currently have anything like that for any
So a
graded
lot of
courses.
schools, right. So a lot of schools are doing that. And I think that's where your question's a little unique. And other people that are listening in, they've opted to go through this pass, no pass option, where the grade that a student gets isn't going to penalize their GPA potentially, and they're going to treat these courses a little differently because of the situation that we are all finding ourselves in. Whereas your campus really wants the students to complete those courses, and they're just going to give them extra time. And managing that process, I'm not sure how big your school is or how many these really are, but to make all of those manual on your end is well, and for faculty too, whoever's filling out those change of grade forms, because each one is going to be its own thing, unless you're accepting a roster, of course, and not a form. Some schools I know have done that in the past, where they've got a signed roster with all of the grades. Again, then you would need to potentially enroll those students in this course if you're tracking them through enrollment. And you could issue, like I said, you could create a new course. It sounds like that's what they've asked you to do. You could also use the existing course and for one term have it graded differently, have a primary component be the lab, or the only component you're offering is the lab. And that would be a little bit unique, but it would still be the same course ID, which, you don't usually allow a student a grade in just that lab component. It's a combination of the lecture and the lab together. So it sounds like what they're trying to do makes sense with creating that additional course. That's really just a tracking that the student completed the lab. And then the final grade being a combination of the two with a grade change will get you to the same end result you would have if there was no COVID-19. It's just going to take a little bit longer and a lot more work on your end.
Yeah, but they still want us to have a pass, no pass option. And I'm assuming that must be for the people that don't wish to continue or can't finish up. I have no idea.
Yeah, you'd have to confirm that with them. I'm not. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're not going to be able to answer that, but
right.
We're going to be doing both. I've already been testing it. I add the pass, no fail to pass, no pass to the grading bases, and I've been marking it to not count for in the GPA or anything at all for the no pass, but I'm going to have to talk to them about the points on the pass Do you know what the majority of people are doing? Are they giving them a 2-point or a 3-point on that
Most
pass?
of the
Grade
most
2 points.
live, yeah, 2 points. Yeah, good.
Okay,
That's
all
what I
right.
did. Is 2 points.
That's what I was thinking, but some school on a previous webinar said that they had to do it to a 3-point because they had requisites that said the previous nursing class had to have a B or higher to go to the next one. I don't think we have any of that, but I'm certainly going to have to double check that.
Yeah, that would be good to look at.
Okay,
All right.
in the essence of time, I'd like to move to another attendee just so we can get.
Yes, I'm
questions.
done.
Great,
Yes.
thanks so much, JD.
Thank
Great
you.
conversation. Thank you.
Thank
Carl, I see that you have a couple questions. Can I unmute you so you can talk? And I'll read the question you have at the bottom. Implications of correcting history on grade basis midterm in order to create a grade category for use with academic advisement. That's a question.
Yeah, I'm here.
Good.
Okay. Typically, credit, no credit classes at our institution do not count towards majors and minors. However, this term and for the summer term, they're making an exception on that. So I just want to be, and I plan on doing that with creating a couple different grade basis, one of which is unique just to be applied to spring and summer term classes, and then a combination of SQL updates. But I just want to be sure that correcting history on a grade basis table doesn't have implications that I may not be aware of.
So can you elaborate as to what correction mode you're going to make changes to, and what changes are you going to make in the correction mode? Are you adding a new grading basis in correction mode and associating a different grade category to those for spring and summer?
Yes. My plan was to, we presently do not use grade categories in order to work with our academic advisement module. So for classes associated with the spring and summer terms, I'd like to create a grade basis that does that. But that involves, I believe, correcting history on the current grade basis that has already been assigned to students for this spring term and also the summer terms, because we've registered for those as well.
Right. So the effective dates on the grade basis table will typically come into effect in two situations that I can think of is when you do the enrollment or when you create a grade roster. So essentially, it's going to try to take what's in the grade basis table on your setup based on the the most current effective dated row as of the enrollment and check what's being set up in the grade scheme table for that effective date, and during enrollment or during grade roster. So when you're making, let's say now you're making a change in correction mode for spring or in summer on that table. Let's say you make a change to the grade basis table, you added a new grade basis or added a new category in the correction mode. The change that you want to be effective for, let's say, is only on the academic requirements, then that's fine. I mean, as long as there is no change as long as it doesn't affect the enrollment side, as long as there is no grade changing that is happening on the grade roster side, I think that's fine. So that's my question is when you're saying you're adding a new correction mode, is it going to affect any of your enrollments? Do you want it to be affect any of the enrollments? Are you going to make any changes to the student enrollment data, or are you giving students choice to make grade changes using self-service? It all depends on that. So maybe you can explain the situation as to what you're adding or what you're updating the grade basis for.
Chiefly for academic advisement purposes, because at our institution, the student, there will be no choice for the student for self-service.
Okay.
That will be an administrative manual process. So I'm looking for a way just to have academic advisement for, these 2 terms, look to this grade category.
Yeah.
And
so I think in that case, you should be fine.
Not in terms before not,
Sorry. Yes, I think in that case you should be fine because as long as you can rerun your degree audit reports or academic requirements, because academic requirements are going to look for what's the requirements set up as. The requirements are set up as the effective date that's valid. It's going to look into the grade basis table for the most current effective date row as of the effective date the requirement is valid for. So as long as you're not changing that link, the effective date to effective date link, effective date of the academic requirements to the effective date of the grade basis link, I think rerunning the academic requirements for your or rerunning the degree audit reports will take the most current information in the grade basis table that you're changing on your correct history side, and those will get reflected on the academic requirements. But your degree audit report needs to be, rerun because obviously the grade bases are going to change, the requirements are going to change. If you're adding a new grade category and maybe making changes to the requirements using that grade category, that'll change. But yeah, to answer your question, that correction mode changes will not affect as long as you're not making any change to the enrollments or class association or whatnot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Samir, while you're on that topic, there are a couple more questions wrapped around that with grading basis changes. How will that affect the downstream processes or components like equations, prerequisites, and how will we assure that, I'm reading a question here, with degree audit and system enforces prerequisites?
You kind of broke off a little bit at the end. So you said degree audit versus enrollment prerequisites?
Right. With anything downstream from changing a grading basis, how will we make sure that our prerequisites are enforced?
Yeah. So one of the first things that you want to make sure is that your grading basis changes that are you're making to this core table, your core setup table. Like in the earlier case we had a question about correction mode changes. Any change to the grading basis to the core table, you want to make sure that what are the requirements that are really getting affected, and either the academic requirements or the enrollment requirements. Academic requirements, looking at the advising side, enrollment requirements, looking at your prerequisite side. So you want to first look at any of those requirements are actually getting affected. If you're using a grade category inside your grade basis table, if those grade categories are being used in any of the requirements, if you're maybe making some calculations based on using the grade categories for certain types of categories of grades. So, those you need to look at to see if those requirements need to be looked at. But, all in all, if you think that adding a grade category or making a change to the grade basis, you have found that these are the requirements that I just need to review, go ahead, review those, rerun the degree audit or prerequisites, and that should, take care of that. Assessment, when you're doing the, impact analysis of what all requirements that I need to look at, you're going to have to write queries to see, if a grade category is being used in these requirements, or if a specific grade basis that's going to affect my enrollment requisites you need to find those enrollment prerequisites, and then analyze those. So there isn't any one quick solution to it. You still need to, get an assessment, impact analysis report, find what requirements, enrollment requirements or academic requirements are that's going to get affected, analyze those. And it might so happen that you just have to make sure that there's not going to be probably any changes. It's just that that these are the ones which are impacted. But you need to know that ahead of time, because it's a core table change that you're doing that eventually is affecting. So ultimately, the bottom line is you just rerun the degree audit, rerun your your requisites, and then you should be fine. There are some changes you may need for requisites. Some courses might need to get, or some requisite rules need to be changed, because in some cases the courses need to satisfy the requirements for this specific set of academic group. Then those need to be updated. Those requisites need to be updated. I think there was another question about downstream on the equation engine. So I think equation engine, there are no delivered equation engines per se that you have that's actually using a specific grade categories or grade basis. It's all your own setup. So again, you need to do a query to see what all equations are using a specific grade basis, which if you're changing maybe pass, no pass, C, and C, that is affecting a specific equation. It might be that certain equations are using grades that are C or better or whatnot. So those you need to make, using queries, find what those equations are, and if they're going to, if they're affected, what those equation engines are used for. So it may be that there is a term fee set up, or a tuition, a specific criteria that's using a criteria that's using C or better grade, or a specific grade basis. Those criteria and equation engines need to be analyzed and then appropriately modified. So that's the impact analysis on the student financial side that needs to be done. I know it's a little bit of a vague question, but it's kind of a very generic answer. If you're looking for a specific answer, then yeah, that's a question. I can answer that.
Okay, thank you, Samir. Ashley, I see that you have a question. Can you think of any cons for setting up a credit, no credit grading basis where a letter grade is converted either to credit, no credit with grade points assigned according to all letter grades A through F? And I'm going to open the mic because you have quite a bit more here. So Ashley, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
You're faint, but we can hear you.
Okay, so my question is more in terms related to prerequisite checking, as a majority of our courses are enforced via a grade point of 0.7. And so the way, and I'm on the curriculum side, I'm not really on the student records registrar's office side. So I wanted to know if there was any cons against setting up the grading basis where the letter grades are assigned a grade point but not included in the GPA. So I believe the way we have it set up is that when someone enters a letter grade, it then gets converted to a credit or a no credit, depending on what that letter grade is. Currently, I don't think any grade points are associated with our credit, no credit grades, but if grade points were to be associated with them, if we say assigned a 0.7 to the D minus, are there any cons against doing that as in terms of, I don't know, student financials, degree audits? I'm looking more in terms of prerequisite checking because that's the side I'm on.
Yeah, so in this particular case, typically what folks are doing is exactly what you just mentioned, is creating a different grading basis with a convert to grades with a grade of D minus converting to a let's say a non-credit or credit, and that credit is a 0.7 GPA, and that's what people are doing. But usually the prerequisite checking, you're going to have to see if in the prerequisite checking and your enrollment requirements, if they are using that specific grading basis. Let's say you created a new grade grading basis, then your enrollment requisites need to be updated with that grading basis. It might so happen that you have the same grading basis, the names. It would be seamless. So 0.7 for a grade basis, or 0.7 is a minimum that's required, and that's going to satisfy a specific set of all the enrollment requirements, then you're fine as long as you're using a grade basis or convert to grade, which is exactly what you just mentioned. So I think that from an enrollment requisite perspective, like again I mentioned, you want to check all your enrollment requisites to see what requirements are getting affected. As long as you make sure that you're only affecting those requirements that need to be affected. As long as you verify that, I think you're fine.
I'm sorry, I got a little confused because on the enrollment requirement setup, we don't do grading basis. I mean, the way enrollment requirements are set up as far as prerequisites, for us, it's mainly set up by the minimum grade points per units. There's no grading basis field inside the enrollment requirement setup.
So you're just specifying about the minimum, minimum points, grade points in that case, right? The 0.7, right?
Correct.
Okay. So as long as that's the case, your convert to grade will work. Making as long as you're actually enrolling, convert to grades are set up in the grade basis table to say that it's using that particular grade, which is currently set up to 0.7, rather than 0 or 2 or whatnot is set up. So as long as you're making sure that the grade basis change table is changed to associate a 0.7, and that grade basis and that grade is actually being, or that the grade points are being used in the enrollment requirements, then that's fine. So what I mean by actually making a list of the enrollment or impact analysis of making a list of the queries or list of all the enrollment requirements that get affected, it's this, which is, what are your requirements that are actually using this particular change? Because this 0.7 might be for certain enrollment requirements, but there are certain enrollment requirements that might say that, I'm not going to, I still need a 2.0 better or 3.0 better. So, you want to make an assessment based on that.
Right. And the grade points would be associated with the letter grade at that point. I mean, a C would then get a C would get converted to a credit with a 2.0 grading basis and have it not included in the GPA. I just wanted to know if there's any negative impacts, say, on the student financial side or on the degree audit side, as I'm not on that side. I can only see it from the more of the prerequisite setup side.
Convert to grades shouldn't have an effect on the academic requirements or the student financial side, because really the GPA calculation, it's only affecting based on whether a student can enroll into a specific sets of classes after it. The academic requirements obviously can be affected a little bit because that you're converting the grade. But in some cases, the academic requirements are or may be looking at the convert to grade. So you may have to do the analysis there to see if it's eventually using or any of those requirements are actually using the final grade or in the GPA calculation. So that I can't say 100% that those are not going to be affected, but from a student financials perspective, the convert to grades or GPA or grade point calculations typically should not have any effect, because what you're doing is, as long as the student is enrolled, as long as they have they've been assessed fees or term fees or whatnot, as long as they finish their grade work, they're fine in terms of the accounting perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One more question that came through. Actually, this has been a good topic for other calls as well. What are the ramifications of allowing students to change to credit, no credit after grades are recorded?
Doug, you want to take that?
So, yeah, sure. So once grades have been recorded, in other words, the grade has been posted to the student's record, at that point, your options have dwindled to just administratively changing them on quick enroll or enroll request, without doing a lot of heroic stuff. So I think at that point, a student wouldn't be able to make those changes through self-service, at least not delivered. Samir, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, you could either, administrative is the only way you could really do, because, you could probably otherwise have to do, if it's a mass enrolled and, same way as a quick enroll using grade change. But yeah, from a student perspective or from the faculty perspective, there isn't any mechanism that can be opened up to update it. You're correct.
The only option on the faculty side would be allowing them to change grades if you're not doing grade changes.
Exactly.
But again, that wouldn't be the student opting in or out. So without a customization, it would be trickier to create mass enrollments to undo that original grade to allow a student in to do anything. So, right, there is a point of no return, which is once that grade has been posted.
Okay, great. I see we have a hand raised. David, I'm going to unmute your mic.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd just like to follow up on that because I had posted a question when we had the larger webinar last week. I had kind of posted a scenario and wanted to get feedback on it. And it's actually this scenario. We are, and I'd like some feedback, and I'd like to contribute to this, is we are doing exactly that. We're planning on posting all the grades, letting the students review those final grades. We are indeed making a modification to the grade roster component that the students view in Fluid Self-Service to allow them to choose. We're kind of putting a little drop down next to each grade and putting some eligibility rules behind it to allow them to choose either pass or no credit or leave the grade alone. We are then planning on not creating a new grading basis. We're actually adding the grades of pass and no credit to the current grading basis by that point. And then we're doing mass enrollment recalculations using SQL scripts. So what do you think about the ramifications of all that?
So
I think it's
just go ahead. Good, Doug.
No, go ahead. That's right.
So just a clarification, those grades that you're, the student picks to choose it to non-credit or to pass or whatnot, you are making SQL script changes to create a grade change enrollment request?
Yes.
On the individual's enrollment records?
Right, the header and the detail records for each individual student based if they have any. We have like a custom set of records that's going to hold the requested grade change, and then we're going to use that to pass in the parameters to the enrollment request tables.
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
No, I think yes, that would work fine. One of the things I stated was, I'll just pronounce it here, is delivered.
Right, no, absolutely not delivered. No, we knew it wouldn't be delivered.
Absolutely. That sounds like you guys are in pretty good shape to make this this bump in the road a little bit more tolerable to your staff and also students, to give them the option of going out after grades have been posted to make a determination of how they want those grades recorded. So, but the mechanisms you're using are delivered. You're just facilitating that piece through the self-service
right.
and creating your header and detail records and going through mass enrollment. So all of the rules should work just fine within the system as delivered, because you're still going to be hitting those COBOLs just as they would if the grade went through originally this way. So I don't really see any issues with that. I tested, obviously, but
oh yeah, we are.
That sounds like a fantastic idea.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, Dustin, I'm going to unmute your mic, I think. There, whoops, it's not unmuting. You need to unmute. It looks like you there you go. Okay, now you're off mute.
I'm kind of wondering if that was something that last caller might be willing to share. We're kind of doing the same process. Let students review their grades. They're going to turn in grade changes and submit those, and we're going to change those. So we're not doing the self-service part of it. But the recreation of grade rosters, I think, is maybe going to be kind of our big issue. Is that, would that be accurate based on what we're planning to do?
So based on what the last caller was mentioning, and I'm, obviously I can't say whether code will be shared, but certainly the grade roster, once grades have been issued initially, you have the two columns unless you've got convert to grades. And that initial grade won't get changed or shouldn't get changed, at least not delivered. The official grade is what will get changed after you process whatever it is that the student's requesting, including the grade basis, if you're changing the grade basis. So you're correct in that your grade roster isn't going to show a different input grade. That'll still stay what it was initially.
Oh, and we added our pass, no pass to the graded, the existing basis already.
Okay, good. That'll be fine as long as the effective date's within the time frame. Those new grades should show up just fine without having to do anything extra.
Oh, you don't have to I thought I understood on the webinar that you'd have to recreate your rosters. The reason.
So I guess it'll depend on when you.
Hang on just a second.
Hey, sorry, babe. Daddy's on the phone.
The reason that
That's okay.
I'm saying that. The reason I'm saying that is because. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
The reason I'm saying that is because we post AW grades. And so we do a partial post at some point and post those grades for students who haven't attended. So the rosters have been generated and some grades have been issued.
That is when you'll need to then, that is when you need to regenerate your rosters because it shows up before that, but once grades have been processed, you're right, they don't show up then.
And can that be, do you think that could be just rerunning the create process that does everything in back?
You'll need to test it, but I think if you've got some grades partially posted, the whole roster's not posted, and you reissue, I believe those new grades will show up on the grade options there.
Okay, we'll test that out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When you're using partial post, though, once those grades have been collected, it does, I think you need to reissue in the grades that have been processed already, posted won't go away, but the new ones should show the new grade options there.
Okay, thank you.
And on the comment of code sharing, I believe we've heard from a couple of different clients that they've already posted in the Hug forums that they've solved this in a certain way, and I think folks are willing to share code. So if anybody is looking for something like that, you might want to check the Hug forums, and if you don't see something, maybe do a shout out and see if anybody's willing to share what they've done. We've heard several mods now from different schools on how they've automated the process with bolt-ons or customizations to get the request from the students and then push it through the enrollment request.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Anyone want to raise their hand, ask another question? Okay, Doug and Samir, do you have any parting words or of advice or anything else you think is important that we didn't hit on this during this conversation?
I don't, not that we didn't mention the other day at this point. Just good luck, everyone, and keep going.
Yeah, I don't have anything, but yeah,
Okay.
That's correct. Good luck with all those changes. That's just keep in mind if it's a core configuration change, like grade basis tables, just do the impact analysis of all those things downstream that are changing and test.
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 Okay, Chris, I'll turn it over to you for the wrap up.
I think that's it. So thank you everybody for joining. We do have the office hours for the academic advising, financial aid, and student financials folks tomorrow. Y'all should have received the link for the GoToWebinar in the same email with this event. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we can try and help out where we can. Again, thank you all so much, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.